Hi, I'm Nate.
I'm Noah.
And this is the 5th chat episode of Talking Lion. Five episodes. They grow up so fast.
Yeah.
You know, now our chats can walk, maybe read.
I was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we talking years? 5 years
Yeah,
old.
well, podcast years.
Yeah.
An episode is a year.
Okay.
Or a week. I don't know. It's either very old or like a.
It's either a toddler or it's like a pretty new baby.
Yeah. Well, either way, thank you for everybody who's sort of stuck around through these. We're having fun with them, and I hope that you can hear that and, have fun with us. We also have this new tradition where we've been eating umami burger before every chat episode.
We've done it twice, and that means we have to do it every time.
It's tradition.
Oh, no.
I know. Tradition. And it's nice. I gotta say, I feel like a new person every time. Umami burger, if you're hearing this, we're primed and ready for that sponsorship.
Also, like, here's the thing. I only recently made the choice to stop eating meat all the time, and I don't want to be this guy, but like the Impossible Burger is so good, I'm skeptical of it. Like it makes no sense that it even isn't meat. I feel like it's just meat and they're lying to people, which, whatever, I can deal with.
You should go into advertising. So good, I'm skeptical.
It's so good.
It's
so good, I'm upset every time I eat it, but in the best possible way.
Well, speaking of advertising, just want to give a reminder that we have a Patreon as well. Everybody who supports the podcast also supports local artists and musicians and essentially just helps us keep this running, but also whatever we don't need to use for keeping the show going, we will give to our collaborators and friends and to grants. So any support means the world to us, and it really means a lot to us that you listen to these too. So,
without further ado,
this is Talking Lion.
Did you do the theme song on these?
What? Yeah, I
Did you do
do.
the theme song?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, you can do the theme song if you want right now. Yeah, it's funny. Like back when we first started Sleeping Lion, you had like 20 grooves. We called them grooves for things to like maybe write over and whatever. And that was just one of them.
It was one of the first things I ever made for Sleeping Lion.
It was just like a little production idea, and it was impossible to write over because it was in like a weird time that like kept alternating.
It just discovered Jack Garrett, so it's just like, let's do something crazy and jazzy.
But then we went to China, and I was like, okay, maybe like I can make a little documentary and use that as the sort of like song in the documentary, and then I never made that. And so this thing was just sort of around, and we're like, we're going to start a podcast. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we need a theme song. And there's this old ass groove that we had just like lying around. So that's the origin story of that theme song.
I'm glad it's had a life.
Yeah.
It had more of a life than I guess I ever thought it would.
It still has a life. It's still beating,
Yeah.
For many people, they just heard it eventually for the first time, And
for anyone who's like listens to the show, it's like you're used to it by now. Like it's drilled into your brain on probably a subconscious level.
If you heard it in the streets, you're like, Talking Lions right around the corner, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd hear it like from a radio necessarily, like on the street, but
someone's listening to it very loud in traffic on the 405.
I don't like those kinds of people, but if they're blasting our podcast, here for it.
Yeah.
Thank you to the random person who is blasting us on the street, hypothetically. But yeah, that's I don't know. I was thinking about it, how people don't necessarily know. Like people might think that we made that
for the podcast,
and we didn't. It was just
something we had lying around.
Use what
it worked surprisingly well as a podcast theme song.
You were ahead of your time.
I guess sometimes things just fall into place.
Well, and I feel like so much of like the give and take of any creative mentality is either am I making something new or am I cannibalizing something that already exists? And I feel like you're really great at making new stuff, and I'm really great at not letting go of
crate
shit.
digging.
What?
You're really good at
grave digging.
Grave digging. I was saying crate digging, but I guess
you said grave digging.
Grave digging is actually kind of a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I feel like grave digging, because so much of like when we like go back, like when we work on songs, it's either we go back to stuff or it's like, oh, we had this great melody idea or whatever, let's bring it back. Like I don't like coming up with new stuff if the old stuff works.
Yeah.
You know, I have no good segue necessarily for this.
That's fine. Just play the theme song again.
I want to talk business. I figure, you know, before we sort of dive into our questions, we like talk, you know, just in general about like stuff that might be able to be helpful for the musicians listening to this. And one of those things is business. And right now is a very weird time with all the COVID stuff going on, but there are things to help artists run their business. And one of the things that we were able to benefit from was from the SBA grant and from the PPP loan. And I just wanted to talk to those listening about that really quickly, just so you could be informed and maybe they can help. I'm not a business professional, so this is not like, I feel like there's some sort of legal disclaimer I need to put on that like this is not like accounting advice or whatever. But essentially, if you have an LLC for your band or for your artist project, you are eligible for an SBA grant, which is just money injected into your company, or a PPP loan, which can get completely forgiven if you run it through your payroll. And it's essentially just a grant to your business to cover your expenses during this weird time. And I know there have been people I've talked to who are like, well, I'm doing all right now. Like I'm making it through. Like I don't want to like, you know, apply for these things or whatever. But I'm kind of saying I'm reading about it, that there are companies that don't need it either, that are definitely taking advantage of this because that's just what companies do. Yeah. And they're taking hundreds and thousands of dollars in this stuff. So if you have an LLC and you can take advantage of this to help your business, and being an artist is a business, then I strongly suggest it, especially because sure, maybe things are all right now, but we don't know how long this is going to go on. We don't know when we're going to be able to play live again. We don't know when we're going to be able to do sessions again. There's a lot of uncertainty that even though things are okay now, we don't know. Like knock on wood, they stay okay, but we don't know how long it's going to necessarily last. And we don't know how long these resources are going to be available. I would much rather you, listener, have them than corporations that don't need them or won't need them. So that's my little soapbox about the SBA and the PPP. I believe the website for the SBA is just sba.gov. And there should be like an application portal on the website. Likewise, I know we did the PPP application through cabbage.com, and it was really easy to do. And again, that even though it's a loan, it can be forgiven if you run it through payroll and dedicate those towards expenses like studio rent or utilities. Of course, if you have a business consultant, consult them, but I just want you to know that these are available because I know I've talked to plenty of people who don't know that these resources are available. But enough about that. Let's move on to music. What are we listening to? No, what are you listening to?
What am I listening to? This morning, this is something new that I was listening to. I just listened to all of the new Kalani album.
How is it?
It's real good. She's just like effortlessly compelling, just such a good vocalist. Just a sick melody writer, just such a, I don't know, it's a really cohesive album. I like most of what she does. If you like any Kalani song, like they all have a similar flavor to them. This album's very like, it's very mature. It deals with like finding your independence as an adult and like a lot of things surrounding, you know, sexuality and relationships. And I think it handles them in a really nice way. And I think it's musically just really fun. And I would literally listen to Kalani sing the phone book. I'm sure she would kill it. So
I'm like a new fan of hers. So yeah, like I still got to dive in. Yeah. What's your old?
Not super old, but I was listening to the first two Anderson .Paak records.
Ooh.
And those are, because I'd never listened to them all the way through. I'd only like taken bits and pieces. So I listened to them completely. It was interesting on his first album, how it's a little like scattered, like it gets a little more like electronic and synthy in places. And you sort of hear, especially now that he has a couple records under his belt, you hear how he developed from this kind of like experimental, like jazzy, but also kind of like funk electronic kind of place to like really this really polished like neo soul live instrument, like a bunch of guys in a room kind of thing. And it's just interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. An artist that has such a defined sound and has like injected himself so wholeheartedly into music over the last couple of years. It's interesting to go back to his first project and hear the kind of growing, like the slight growing pains. Or I'm always fascinated by how artists develop over time.
Well, speaking of Anderson .Paak and like moving even further back there, my old this week was Watsky.
Oh yeah,
I was listening to Watsky's record, All You Can Do, and there's one song on it called Never Let It Die, which I don't know. I mean, it's that song. I remember listening to it when I was in high school, and it just like getting my blood boiling. Like it's really the song of like somebody who's just like working and like not giving up and stuff. And there's so many like I'm never giving up songs, but there's something that's like very direct about the way the Watsky just sort of presents a lot of stuff. And I feel like the way that he manages to sort of turn phrases and stuff has always been really impressive. Watsky also just recently broke the world record for the longest freestyle.
Wow.
He did it to raise money for COVID relief charities. He's always just been like on it, I feel.
Yeah, he's a great writer.
And not only that, I was telling you about this. I, as a kid, saw Watsky like 8 times live, and his drummer was Anderson .Paak. Like that was just what he was doing. He was the touring drummer for Watsky's band. So it's just that's my old, somewhat related to yours.
Yeah, that's cool.
And my new is the song Lake House by Jeremy Zucker.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I loved like all the songs on the record, but that was the song that I think just I didn't give enough love to. And then I was listening to it while biking around the other day, and it just really hit me. Just the way he crafts the story, how like all the guitars and the drums come in towards the end, and the fact that like he has this really catchy chorus that's in 7/4.
Yeah,
and it's just like awesome. It's really he's just on another level. But you can really hear the musicianship in the record Lake House, but also in the song.
Yeah.
So that's my new. I feel like when it comes to TV show, we're mostly at this point just watching TV shows together. Wait, actually, no.
Yeah, I have been watching something on my own recently.
I say you run with that,
which I could talk about. Oh boy, can I talk about this
please
show?
Do.
I recently started watching The Magicians, which is on Netflix. It's a sci-fi original series, which I didn't realize initially when it was recommended to me. One of my favorite shows growing up was Eureka. I used to watch a lot of sci-fi, like when I would come to America for the holidays. Eureka is a great show. I also watched a show called Warehouse 13. I mention these shows to demonstrate that I have a soft spot in my heart for sci-fi original series. There's a level of like camp, but also like heart.
Did you ever watch Dresden?
Dresden Files. That's also a sci-fi show. I never watched that one, but I know about that one.
Because I read the books.
Oh yeah,
that they were based on, about the magician or like the wizard or whatever who like solves crimes.
Yeah, I think this is kind of in the same universe. So The Magicians is not as good as Eureka. It's all over the place. The writing is kind of a mess. It makes me laugh out loud in that so bad it's good kind of way. There's this whole like thing with a Taylor Swift song in the first season where he like escapes from his mental hell by like singing a Taylor Swift song. Like there's serious cringe value to this show.
Wow. Did they license the Taylor Swift song?
They licensed a whole ass Taylor Swift song, so the lead actor in the show could sing it really out of key in a scene where he's in a mental hospital. It's like they set it up in the previous episode too by having this one character run up and push him up against a tree and be like, dude, because he's a psychic, he can read minds. He's like, dude, stop singing Taylor Swift in your head. And it's all like serious, but it's just oh man. But here's the thing, the show has gotten under my skin. I've started to really care about the characters, even though they're all ridiculous. And they all spend most of their dialogue either dumping exposition really clunkily or like roasting each other in this like really catty, almost Gossip Girl kind of way. But the special effects are really tight. And there's like moments where it tries to be really good and moments where it kind of does. I'm only partway through the first season, but there's 4 seasons of it. And I fully intend on just watching all of it. It's my new guilty pleasure. And if you're into that kind of thing, it's a very specific kind of thing to be into, but it is very specifically the thing that I am into right now. So I would recommend The Magicians on Netflix.
We also watched Solar Opposites.
Oh, yeah.
Justin Roiland's new show. I thought it was really interesting. I think it feels like Rick and Morty episodes that didn't get a chance to have life.
Yeah.
But I really like the dynamic between Corvo and Terry, and Thomas Middleditch is great.
Yeah.
It's a lot of really funny sort of improvisational stuff as you come to expect from the sort of Justin Roiland camp, but it is solid. I will say where it does manage to sort of set itself apart from Rick and Morty, that really blew my mind. That was like really special. There's this whole subplot about how the alien kids shrink real people down and put them kind of in this like terrarium. And the parts where it kind of focused on that development was incredible because it wasn't necessarily funny, but it was hilarious how they were sort of like doing the thing that was funny
about it was how genuinely they pulled off that arc.
Yeah, they did it so well. And yet at the same time, it's sort of making fun of like Escape from New York and, you know,
like
Snowpiercer.
Mad Max and Snowpiercer, and like any kind of post-apocalyptic, like humans, even The Walking Dead, like any of those.
But it wasn't irreverent. They took it seriously,
Yeah.
which was like really cool. Like I appreciated that. On the other side, I feel like when they tried to like tackle gender politics, they kind of missed the mark.
Wasn't great.
So, I say it's worth watching because what else are we going to do?
Yeah, it fills the void.
And if you like Rick and Morty, you're going to like this. If you're like, Rick and Morty's not really for me, then this isn't going to be for you either. Like Justin Roiland's not gaining like new fans with this.
Yeah, it's just satisfying people. Okay, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. Wasn't it really weird hearing Justin Roiland? Like, wasn't Corvo a hard character to like pay attention to because Justin Roiland has established his voice so like wholeheartedly in Rick, and we're so used to hearing that character that it was the uncanny valley for me, like listening to him talk.
I very specifically at the start of it was like, I'm going to feel this way if I don't just like shut that off.
Yeah.
Like I went into watching it like Rick and Morty who. Like I went into it.
Yeah,
like,
that's kind of what you have to do. I had a hard time doing that.
I just had to shut it off. I just had to be like, new voice, who's this? Like, new character, who is this? Like I think my brain just made it really simple. It's just like, well, he's not burping.
Yeah, it's like it's slightly different. That's the thing that's off-putting about it. But it's like he already has such range as a voice actor, like between voicing both Rick and Morty. We're so used to his voice. There was a very narrow range of where his voice acting could go that would like justify it being a new character, and he pretty much is just talking normally.
And I don't imagine he would want somebody else to necessarily do that. I think the big conceit is the fact that he doesn't voice both main characters at this point.
That's the big difference.
What is a cool thing about this week?
So there was a new Logic update this week. Anyone who uses Logic, I'm sure you know this. If you don't use Logic, you probably don't care. So I'm going to try to be as condensed with why this is cool to me as possible.
10.5.
10.5. So Logic just came out with a new update. I was joking around with my friend Adam calling it 10 point Ableton. Because they basically just introduced a lot of features that Ableton has, like the ability to like strings loops together, and also a new sampler, which allows you to just drag an audio and chop it up and turn it into an instrument. For those of you who don't know, Logic's sampler, the EXS-24, is notoriously a piece of hot garbage, and it looks ugly. It's hard to use. What's under the hood is fine as a sampler, but it's like nothing compared to Ableton's ability.
It wasn't usable.
It wasn't like usable. It wasn't fun. It wasn't intuitive. It wasn't like an Apple product. It was an old holdover from what Logic used to be. So they finally, I feel like I've been asking for this. Like it's been in the back of my head for like a really long time. Just like if they could just give the sampler an overhaul, like that would be like the game changer. Just in the same way that it's like, oh, if they could just introduce non-destructive audio pitching, like if you could just transpose an audio region. Like I don't know what I did before that. Like being able to just pitch
by the clip, like
by the clip, like audio regions ups and down, like that didn't used to be a feature. And like that's like I would say 60% of my workflow is just that. So now there's this new sampler and it's pretty cool. But it made me think about, because this is something I spend a lot of time thinking about, is like about our tools and about our relationship with our tools. And I think this extends to really any profession in any industry, but specifically in music, there's a lot of like friendly debate between like what DAW you use. And it's a common question, like for producers, like what software do you produce in? Once you peel back the layers and you have this discussion long enough, you always kind of tend to arrive in the conclusion that it's all just tools, and what's in your brain is ultimately what makes the music. But it's interesting how there still are these like superficial relationships that people compare, just because it's like, I mean, it's a cultural thing. Ultimately, like you get so intimately familiar with whatever software that you're using. Like Logic is it's a collaborator. Like it's like a friend that I kind of hate as well. It's like it's like a real relationship that I have with the software. So when there's an update, it's like
your friends come back from summer camp.
Yeah, friends come back from summer camp
and
learned Frisbee. Now I can play Frisbee with my friend, and it's just interesting the relationship we develop with technology, and also how all of these softwares are kind of converging to be the same. Like they're all like competing for features, and as time goes on, there's a sort of entropy to, okay, now Logic has live looping, which allows you to like make music non-linearly like you can in Ableton, and like that's like a really interesting thing. And like Reason now has VSTs and like pitch correction software. Every DAW is slowly stealing features from each other, so they're all becoming kind of the same, or like optimized towards the same goal as they sort of compete with each other. And that's also super interesting.
What I thought was interesting, and this isn't my cool thing, this is just piggybacking off of yours, is that I remember a while ago, Lito said, I think it was like when we did the Q&A or something, he said like he's never worried about people seeing like his sessions or whatever, because he was like, well, you could see how I do it, but you won't necessarily be able to do it. Like what, I'm using just the tools that are there. Like I'm putting these stuff together and I'm doing this thing on the mix or whatever, but by and large, what makes me a producer is what I bring to the table. And I feel like the nth degree of that was Logic 10.5 coming with the Ocean Eyes session.
Yeah.
Like Phineas put out the Ocean Eyes session, and you can just, I thought was so cool is you could go through the comp and just see like an essentially now iconic melody in like the post chorus. There were like 3 or 4 different versions that were somewhat similar, but were different melodies. And Phineas picked that one over this one. I'm sure like this wasn't like the session. Like I'm sure it was optimized for the template. But I think what's really cool is that when you listen to it, it does sound like the record. And then when you take the plugins off, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so you get to see how like these stock Logic plugins, like you don't need to spend all your money on all this stuff. Like you're saying, everything is a tool. You can use these tools to make,
a career-starting record.
That's
great advertising for Apple.
Yeah.
And it's
also, I mean, it helps when your 13-year-old sister has like an incredible voice.
Yeah.
But like,
and Phineas is just really good at, putting those sounds together. He's good at operating the machinery. But it's cool to see. It's like it's a really cool thing to see under the hood with something like that. And it's a good educational tool. And like I said, it's a great advertising tool.
And what I'm sort of broadly playing at too is like I feel like people are getting into production in this time. And I think what's really exciting is to see how this update plus like seeing under the hood of Ocean Eyes plus all of this time, we're going to see new producers. We're going to potentially see Grammy-winning producers who are going to point to, oh, I wasn't really that into production, but then I had 150 days of nothing that I had to fill.
Yeah.
And so I became a producer, and that's how I got a platinum record. I think it's really interesting to think about how, because these tools for us are like, oh, cool, like we have a sampler, but for like, I don't know, for somebody new, that could be the thing that unlocks it.
Yeah, that's very true. It occurs to me that I already have such a workflow that sometimes when new features introduced, I'm like, I'm not really going to use that. But like, they really are for people. Like, I really appreciate how Logic, as an Apple product, is always trying to push the envelope of being like really user friendly. And it can be a little like, it looks a little like Baby's First DAW, like gimmicky, like based off GarageBand, all the sort of like XY pads and like the colorful little loops. But I started producing on GarageBand, and I started the first things I ever did on GarageBand were putting Apple loops together. Like the sensibility that got me to interface with music technology in the first place was Apple's readily available like library of loops and samples that like could be spliced together. And now with like between Splice and the fact that like Logic has a built-in like really cool sampler that can chop up things for you, and like you can layer loops on top of each other and build arrangements without even opening the arrangement window. Like I can't even imagine for people who are starting out, like how quickly it'll unlock the joy of like actually making something. I like that is really exciting to me.
Well, and that's the thing is like UI in a lot of ways is for new creators everything. There are other plugins that are great EQs or compressors or whatever, but because they at a glance they look so daunting, when you're just starting out you become overwhelmed and then you nope out.
Yeah.
I know that there's some people who want to dive in when they're overwhelmed. I was never that person.
Yeah.
And so that always kind of like took me out. But yeah, if you have a sampler that is easy to use, if you have a UI that's pretty and looks nice when you get to futz around with it. And not only that, like when you start out, you're like, oh, well, I need to spend all this money to make like a hit sounding record. So what's the point? Like, I'm not going to do it. And then you get to open up Ocean Eyes and you see, oh, like with that compressor and like Space Designer and like a stock EQ, I can actually make my vocals sound professional.
Yeah.
Like I can actually like look at that and learn. And it takes, I think, a lot of the mystery out of songwriting and production, which
and
I think is
I
really
think
cool.
that can only help music, like taking the mystery and the sort of confusion out of what it actually takes to make a record.
And I'm okay if we lose our job as a result of it.
I fully support it.
Though I think Oak Felder said something really interesting, possibly also in an Apple ad. I don't know.
Probably.
But what I really liked is he's like, I hope that like new young creatives are pushing the envelope so that I either have to be like, oh, I got to get better and learn how this new shit works, or I don't deserve my job.
Yeah.
And I love that he like sort of puts it like that, where he's just like, if people are pushing the envelope, it's going to push me to be better.
Yeah.
And I don't think you and I have ever settled for complacency.
No.
My cool thing is less cool. My cool thing, I had three very small things. The first is
Okay.
I learned about a copyright trap.
Oh, yes. Tell me about that.
Copyright traps are where atlases and maps would put like fake towns in various states so that if another atlas company tried to copy that map without doing the work, they could be like, oh, well, McTavern Town isn't real. We're going to sue you for copyright infringement. And that conceit was sort of made famous by John Green's like Paper Towns. But I learned that the show Columbo, I learned this from actually from Rain Johnson's Twitter. That the show Columbo, they never said his first name. I think on a badge it might have said like Frank Columbo, but Columbo was always just Columbo. But this guy made a trivia book, like a book of just random trivia, and as a copyright trap, he put Philip Columbo. And then Trivial Pursuit said, "What is Columbo's first name?" Philip.
Oh, shit.
And then they got sued
Damn.
by the guy who made the trivia book.
Whoa. Caught in the trap.
I thought that was cool. The other
That
thing
is actually really cool.
the other thing that I thought was cool was I saw a collection of floor plans for famous TV sitcom houses.
Oh, yeah. You sent me the Frasier one.
Yeah, so it was cool to sort of see like the floor plan of like Frasier's
Yeah,
apartment.
Frasier's apartment is weird.
Because it's essentially a set, and then when they go to other rooms throughout the life of the show, it's like, oh, well, there's the hallway and there's that, but you don't necessarily see the whole house because they don't, it's not single camera, so you're not going down the hallway. The hallway doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The hallway just doesn't exist. So it was just kind of cool to see the floor plan. That was my other cool thing, and then my last cool thing is a demo for Unreal Engine 5 just came out.
Oh, yeah.
And see, now I get the video game
Oh, yeah.
cool
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It has like a new geometric system that's like
So many triangles.
billions
of
billions of
triangles.
the triangles, and like a new dynamic lighting system. And I don't know. On the one hand, like I think that that's really, really cool as far as just graphically, like the gameplay of this random demo looked gorgeous
so cool.
and breathtaking. But also, I don't know. It's been on my to-do, my like New Year's resolution for almost 2 years to take like an Unreal 4 class and like actually kind of learn how to do some game design stuff,
Yeah.
because I feel like that was something that we were both kind of interested in before we started Sleeping Lion, and then they kind of got stunted a little bit.
Yeah.
And who knows, like by day 100, I might be the kid who needs, just some sort of better access into something, and Unreal 5 could be that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited about it because my hope is that by the time it comes out, I have some understanding of like how it works.
Yeah.
So that I could be like, oh, cool, new update for something I understand already.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
What is the last picture in your camera roll?
What is the last picture of my camera roll? Oh, it's this hill in Malibu that I found this morning, where it's just the ocean and the rocks. I was trying to go hiking, but it was still very much closed. Some trails are open, but it's difficult to figure out what's open and what isn't.
Malibu looks
It's all
nice. I've
about
never
parking.
been, so that looks cool. Mine was from the other day. I was biking, and we were talking. You asked how far I'd ever gone biking.
Yeah.
And I said like not really far from our house because I sort of just like weave, like, I'll go sort of in these like large squares almost. So you were in the back of my head. I'm like, I'm gonna go farther than I've ever gone, from like a mile, like as the crow flies perspective. I made it downtown, and it was really cool because there's this like nice park. I think it's called Grand Park, but you just sort of see LA City Hall just sort of peeking out from the park.
That is cool.
And it's like well framed by like the city planning, which I've always been kind of a fan
Yeah,
of, like
that is cool.
how city planning deals with architecture and how it sort of highlights architecture. So yeah, it was just kind of cool to like see this side of the city that I hadn't seen before. And I was actually struck by a kind of muchness. That's what my brain said, was like a muchness of a city like LA.
Yeah.
For the fact that we've already, lived here 2 years and stuff, there's still so much that I haven't seen of this city,
So much LA.
and then there's so
to
much
see.
life happening. I mean, you've got, the Broad and the Mocha. You've got like museums that every day or every month or every quarter or year has new stuff.
Yeah.
You've got like concert halls that are playing symphonies that we have never heard in our life before. There's just so much kind of happening in a city that now isn't happening. And I think that kind of like hit me, not in a sad way, but more just like, wow, I really did not explore what like this city could be. I thought I was, because I was just going to concerts and shows or whatever. But no, this was like,
Yeah.
I was struck by a certain muchness.
Well, and here's the thing. I think the muchness of New York is so in your face and so immediate. Like you go to New York and it's like, this is much. Like there is so much to do here. I think LA there's I would say almost as much stuff to do in LA as there is in New York. It's just you have to seek it out a little more because everything's so spread out. Like it's not as in your face, the muchness of it.
When was the last time you were hit? Because you know the feeling I'm talking about,
Yeah,
right?
for
Like
sure.
the sort of overwhelming, like the feeling that you were both sort of like very small, but also a part of something that's like very, very big. Like when was the last time you kind of felt a muchness in the world?
I feel like it was when I first drove to Hollywood. This is not that long ago. It was like a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, or a little over a month ago, that I finally was like, I was like, told myself I was gonna go for a drive around the neighborhood, and I drove down Sunset, and then I ended up in Hollywood. I'm like, oh, I'm in Hollywood, and I started driving around all these places that I'd seen it from Ubers or like seen from the passenger seat of a car, and just like seeing the city in this new way gave me that sense of like, oh, like wow, like LA is like this whole thing that I've like only scratched the surface of. And like here I am just like bumming around it.
There's definitely a muchness to that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's something very different. There's something very different about driving it versus being in an Uber. Like it's just a totally different channel in your brain of like navigation and like how you're interfacing with a space like that.
Well, because you get to make decisions.
Yeah.
You get to just decide where you want to go.
That's the other thing that hit me is like,
And there's a muchness to decisions.
oh man.
Oh, man.
Oh man. There's so much to decide all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard to decide. What am I going to have for breakfast? I don't know.
Oh, that gets me every time.
Every time.
You know? Well, you get why like our brains just need patterns and need
Yeah.
routines, because I think that if we had to make decisions constantly, like if we had to make decisions in the ways that we just sort of fall into routines for like every little thing, I think we would go nutso just a little
You're
bit.
so nuts.
There's muchness.
Much.
What is your high and low of the week? Start with the low, because
yeah.
I think we have the same.
I think, yeah, we probably have
high.
the same high. My low for the week is I bonked our roommate James's car while backing out of our parking lot, and I just felt bad that I scratched up his car. Although his car is actually fine. He just was able to wipe it off with a paper towel, which is great. Our car has a massive dent in it. I don't know how it was such an incongruous meeting of these two cars, where one got away scot-free and the other one has like a massive dent in it. But that was just it was just a
Well,
shitty.
and now our bumper is incongruous.
Yeah, it's totally incongruous. But you know,
I feel bad because I was like mad dad when I found.
no, but I
when
mean
saw it.
that's like, you know, that's how it should be. Like it just feels shitty to like make a mistake. That's the thing. I feel like I'm getting all this like suburban teenage American stuff out of my system too, because it's like everyone has to go through this when they're 15, 16 with a car. Like everyone's gonna dent up a car with some stupid thing. Literally, I told James, he's like, yeah, dude, I once like knocked out someone's tail light, like just by like there was no good reason why I should have done it. I just like curbed into someone's like car too hard and like broke their tail light, and then just like drove away. So it's just
Everybody has their first backup, Nick. Like that.
Yeah.
Like my mom's car. I just like I backed up, and it just like I was 15 and working at this like studio, and I backed into the owner of the studio's car.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just one of those things. It's a shitty feeling when when something like that happens, where it's just a mistake and it's like, there's like I'm constantly faced with the physical repercussions of it. But ultimately it's all, you know, it's all just material stuff. It's all just things. It's all fixable.
My mom always says it's all just money and time.
It's all just money and time.
I think my low was, it wasn't like a thing, but I didn't smoke for like a really long time or like take edibles or anything for a really long time, because oftentimes I'd be like all right when I would get high, but the next day I would just feel terrible. Like I would feel like very depressed. And we bought some edibles, and it's legal here. So we bought some edibles.
Don't listen, federal government.
Yeah, federal government. Honestly, FBI, if you're listening, we don't mind that you're listening. Just donate to our Patreon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got the money.
You've got the funds, feds. So I've been taking these edibles like infrequently, because it's like it does help me get to sleep. Like it helps me like finish just that last little bit of work and then go to sleep, which is nice. Or like enjoy whatever we're watching, you know, just like laugh a little bit more or whatever. But like so consistently, I wake up the next day just extremely depressed. And every time I'm about to take it, I'm like,
It's like a dopamine hangover.
yeah, no. And every time I'm about to take the edible, I'm like, maybe this time I won't feel shitty the next day. Like maybe that was just like I didn't get enough sleep or like whatever. But it's at this point become like consistent enough that I'm like, okay, I get that the chemistry makes sense. Like I guess like I'm having a dopamine hangover or something. But yeah, I think like halfway through the week, I just like I woke up in the morning just not good at all. And I just like went on a bike ride. I found a bike path that was nice and I called my mom, and I felt like better ultimately by the time like the day kind of like progressed, and I think my like brain chemistry kind of like got back to normal. But yeah, that was probably like the lowest day, because I think that was the day that I really felt like really heard the dialogue of like you're a piece of shit and like everybody hates you and your music, and like why are you working on a podcast when like nobody listens to your music and or cares what you have to say. Like that was when that like dialogue was coming.
But it's never fun.
Yeah, but it goes away. And honestly, I feel like you and Meg and my mom and everybody, like I think just when I can be with people who remind me that like that's my dialogue, but that's not necessarily the dialogue. Yeah, it's a lot better. But yeah, that was like I had a bad mental health day essentially. I think our high though was really nice. We decided as like a family, you, me, and Meg, to go to the poppy field.
Yeah. Because everyone else was doing it.
Right, hey, and keeping our distances and everything and wearing our masks. What's interesting is that when we actually got to the poppy field, the reserve was closed. And so we didn't actually get a chance to see the poppies. But there was something so nice about like driving through the mountains and driving for like a while and just like blasting Paramore and Fall Out Boy and like yelling and screaming at the top of our lungs to these songs and just like having a road trip and getting out of LA.
Yeah. It was a really nice feeling just to get out of the city.
That was my high nose, probably your high.
Yeah, I would say that.
What was your perspective on the high?
My perspective on it, yeah, it was nice to, because it's interesting. I've been kind of doing a mini version of that pretty often, just like finding cool like bits of field or mountain around LA. But it was nice to like get so far out of the city that was all there was, that you really escape. It made me think of when we very first moved to LA. There was something so striking as we drove across the country. And when you do that from the East Coast to the West Coast, you see the landscape change. Somewhere in the middle, you all of a sudden start seeing a little bit of desert and these mountains. And I like, even though now I'm completely immune to it, I still remember how it felt to see that for the first time and to just be struck by it and be like, whoa, like look at these mountains. And we're like, California's just got this really crazy landscape, and it's nice to just be reminded of what a crazy geological site California is.
The wind, I think.
Oh really, yeah. And just that was probably the thing that like really made it feel different, was just like this
like fresh air.
This really fresh air, getting bombarded with fresh air.
So I want to introduce something to the podcast.
Okay.
I mentioned this to you after we recorded the last one. I think it would be fun if every week we challenged each other to do something that pushed us out of our comfort zone just a little bit.
Okay.
Nothing like crazy or illegal, just like a friendly kind of challenge, And then we come back next episode and we report our findings. And it'll be just it's a challenging lion. I'm
challenging lion.
Maybe that's it. Whatever.
I like it.
So I have a challenge. I know you have a challenge. So I'm gonna give you my challenge.
Okay.
And
challenge me.
I'm excited to hear yours. My challenge. I challenge you to call 3 people you haven't spoken to in over a year.
Okay. I like that. That's a good one. I had a feeling it was going to be something like that. Something about reaching out to people. That's good. That's a good challenge. I will probably do that, and it'll probably be an enriching experience. The nice part about that is because I barely reach out to anyone, that list of people who I haven't reached out to in over a year is rather long.
I almost put in at least 3.
At least 3.
Open the door, see what floods in. What's your challenge?
My challenge for you is, I don't know how much you might see this coming, and
I see nothing, so I'm terrified.
Okay. It's no. This is a good one. I feel like you'll like this. My challenge to you is to go on the internet, go on like Serious Eats or something, or just do a little bit of research and find a recipe for something that you want to cook. Something not too crazy, like nothing crazy elaborate, but like I would say do enough internet reading that you find something that you're like something that you see the picture and you look at it and you're like, it excites you, like something that, or that you at least could see yourself getting excited about.
I'm down.
And just go through the steps.
I feel like our listeners are learning that I have like, it's not like a fear of cooking, but just like I am a microwave meal. I grew up kind of like, my mom cooked, but I had a somewhat unpredictable schedule. I was going out to the city. I was hanging out with my friends. Like she didn't know when I would be home. And so I kind of like wound up leaning into like Trader Joe's frozen burritos.
Yeah.
And during
they're great.
They're great.
All credit to Trader Joe's frozen burritos.
And also like the gnocchi from Trader Joe's too.
Yeah.
Is great too. So I'm just like I'm either like microwave meal or like Postmates.
Yeah.
And I feel like oftentimes when I do cook, it's like to check off I cooked.
Yeah.
Or like it's a social thing. Like, oh, we're going to cook something tonight. Or Max is coming over and we're going to cook something. Oh, I miss Max coming over and cooking.
I know.
But yeah, so I appreciate you like.
I mean, I know all these things. This is why I challenge. Well, and also partially coming from a place of like, when I was living sort of semi by myself, and when I moved back to Boston, I was like kind of the most isolated I've ever been. It was one of those things that I think brought me the most joy and satisfaction, was just like the simple joy of like finding a recipe and being like excited to make it. So I encourage you to try to find that the sort of the agency and the sort of novelty that comes with like finding something and wanting to make it. And then sort of what's great about a recipe is it's like you got the steps, you follow the steps, and hopefully it turns out well.
No, I appreciate the challenge. I feel about cooking and production the same way, which is the muchness of it.
Yeah.
That I feel like because there has always been, with production or with cooking, like so many decisions you can make. I was talking to Casey Cook about it actually, that songwriters are like, it feels like a very linear thing where it's like, as a songwriter, I always feel like there's one version. I'm just trying to get to the best version of the song.
Yeah.
Whereas production and cooking, there's just so many decisions you can make and like so many mistakes and revisions and like whatever that can happen. But I appreciate the challenge and I accept the challenge. And everybody who's listening, tune in next week
next
Wednesday to find out if I can cook and you can.
And I can pick up the phone and call human beings.
Right, they're both, for us, those are both harder than they sound.
Yeah, no, these are good challenges.
Our comfort zone is very specific.
It is very specific.
Well, lastly, what are you looking forward to?
What am I looking forward to? All right, I'm looking forward to this challenge. I feel like that's a good one. I feel like I'm slowly chipping away at all my tasks, and I have a little bit of a clear patch. Like I've given myself a bit of a window. So I'm excited to maybe like work on some music for fun, music for birds this week. And also just
Music for Birds is your solo project for anybody listening. He's not actually writing music for I mean, unless you want to write music for the birds.
For birds. Nah,
just want to add some context.
Yeah, I guess so. For those of you who don't know. Yeah, so I'm excited to maybe work on some music for fun, or maybe also just like play video games. The same, that's the thing. I feel like I have actually been a little bit more on the busy side of the last like week or so, and all of my non-work time has been devoted to just keeping the shell that is my personhood together. And now I feel like I have a little bit more bandwidth to just kind of enjoy the time, and I'm looking forward to using that well recreationally.
I appreciate that.
And what about you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, so we're like minutes away from getting the master back for Balance.
Oh yeah.
So I'm excited to just start that distribution process and get like the assets together for promoting it and whatnot. But we're also like recording an episode with Miette that's going to be like a chat about the song that's going to come out kind of closer to when the song comes out. And I'm really excited to just like catch up with my old friend.
Yeah, that should be fun.
We go back and this song is a special one, and I'm excited to just talk about it with her, because I don't know, we did one of these chats for Don't Like Me, and I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
I had fun with that too.
But I also love just sort of reminiscing about demos.
Yeah,
I think the process, I don't know what it is, but I feel like talking about the process of anything and then being able to hear it sonically,
it's really satisfying.
It's really cool. There's a reason why like behind the scenes used to sell DVDs, you know?
For sure.
So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the Snowpiercer TV show.
Oh yeah,
I'm curious if it's going to be good or bad. Oh,
I hear it's unlike the movie, but That's all. I mean, that's all I'm really gonna say.
And again, I'm excited about recording Gaming Lion.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do it this week because I'm working on a film and we're trying to clear our plate. But likewise, since our plate is now a little bit clearer, I can then focus on this new project. And we got the art back finally
It's
finished.
so cool.
And it's so cool. So I'm just excited for that kind of chapter in the Talking Lion, Gaming Lion saga, now that we've sort of put a bow on the next Sleeping Lion song.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think with that we can call it a podcast.
I think so.
You know, have you been entertained, listener,
If you made it this far, you must have been at least a
Something.
little bit entertained.
or really bored?
Yeah.
You know, but I just appreciate you got listening to. We're just two friends having a conversation about what life is like, and we watch an obscene amount of television and get really excited about video game engines.
Yeah. Oh man, though. I can't wait till the video game engines look better than real life.
Once again, we have a Patreon. That would mean the world to us if you supported, but also another reminder that the SBA and the PPP are for you if you need it, and to definitely check those things out. We have a new Talking Lion episode with David Archuleta coming out on Sunday, so be sure to listen to that when that comes out, and we will catch you again on the flip,
On the flip
flop,
flop.
flip, bin floppin'. No, we need
No.
a better. We
We-
need a
yeah,
way to
we-
end this.
we-
How do we end the show? You need to come up with the catchphrase right now.
And that's a wrap. That's not anything.
Can you just say good night, New York?
Good night, New York.
We would like to thank Alan C. for supporting Talking Lion on Patreon and Isotope.